The evening sky was turning darker as heavy clouds gathered over the quiet road that led out of town. The wind carried a cold bite, warning that rain would soon follow. On that lonely path, a young woman named Sarah walked slowly, almost dragging her feet. Her right hand pressed against her ribs, and every breath she took made her eyes tighten in pain. She tried to stay calm and steady, but her body felt weaker with each passing minute. Sarah had always been strong and independent. She worked at a small storage warehouse where she lifted boxes, sorted supplies, and helped customers. That morning, she had tried to move a wooden crate that was heavier than she expected. It slipped from the edge of the shelf and tipped forward, catching her side with a sharp corner before it crashed onto the ground. At first she thought it was only a bruise. She held her breath, waiting for the pain to fade, but it stayed and grew stronger through the day. She told her boss she was fine because she didn't want to cause trouble or take leave. She managed to finish her shift, though she moved slower than usual. Nobody noticed how she held her breath whenever she bent or lifted anything by afternoon. The pain had spread across her chest, deep and heavy. She told herself she could rest once she got home, but when she finally left work and stepped outside, she felt dizzy. She had no family nearby, no one to call, and she didn't want to worry the few people she knew. So she decided to walk home, as she usually did, hoping she could handle it on her own. As the sky grew darker, the wind pushed against her, making her steps uneven. She hugged her coat tighter around her body, but even the pressure of the fabric made her ribs ache. She breathed in slowly, trying not to wince. Her feet felt heavier, her vision blurred when she blinked. The road ahead was empty except for a few scattered lights from passing cars. Sarah began to doubt she would make it home before the storm hit. She took a deep breath and felt a sharp sting that forced her to stop walking. She tried again, slower this time, but her knees shook under her weight. A soft sound escaped her lips, half a sigh, half a cry, but it was lost in the wind. At that moment, a pickup truck approached from behind. The headlights stretched across the road, and the engine hummed steadily. The driver, a man named David, was on his way home from his late shift at a repair shop. He had planned to go straight home, eat something warm, and rest. But as he drove, something in the corner of his eye caught his attention. A figure on the side of the road. Moving unsteadily, David slowed down. The figure stumbled again, nearly falling. Concern filled his chest. He pulled over to the shoulder, turned on his hazard lights, and stepped out into the cold wind. He walked quickly toward the woman, careful not to startle her. "Are you all right?" he asked gently as he got closer. Sarah looked up, and her tired eyes met his. For a moment, she tried to stand straight, as if pretending nothing was wrong would make everything better. But the pain made her shoulders slump. "I just need to get home," she said softly, her voice weak. David noticed how she held her side, how her breathing seemed shallow and careful. Something was clearly wrong. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, but he also couldn't ignore the situation. "Did something happen?" he asked in a calm tone. For a few seconds, Sarah hesitated. She didn't like telling strangers about her problems. She was used to managing everything alone. But the truth was too heavy to hide. "My ribs," she whispered, barely audible under the wind. "They're already broken, I think." David's expression shifted instantly. He stepped closer, but kept his movements slow and gentle, giving her space. "All right," he said softly. "You don't have to move anymore. Let me help you." Sarah shook her head slightly. "I don't want to trouble anyone." "You're not troubling me," David replied. "You're hurt. You can't walk like this." Another gust of wind pushed against her, and she swayed. David instinctively reached out and steadied her arm, careful not to touch her ribs. She leaned lightly against him, too weak to stand properly. "The clinic isn't far," he said. "Please let me take you there." Sarah lowered her eyes. She didn't want to be a burden, but she could barely stand. Finally, she nodded slowly. David guided her toward his truck, moving with extra care. He opened the door and helped her climb inside, supporting her without putting pressure on her injured side. She sat down carefully, breathing shallowly to avoid pain. David closed the door gently and hurried to the driver's side. As he started driving, he glanced at her from time to time. She stared out the window, her face pale and tense. Small raindrops began to hit the windshield, and the storm finally broke. "Do you need anything?" he asked quietly. Sarah shook her head. "Just thank you for stopping. Anyone would have," he replied softly. But Sarah wasn't sure that was true. Many cars had passed her earlier, and none had stopped. She felt a tightness in her throat, not from pain, but from the unexpected kindness. They reached the emergency clinic in less than 10 minutes. David parked close to the entrance and hurried around to help her out of the truck. She tried to move on her own, but the moment she twisted slightly, pain shot through her chest. And she gasped. "Easy," David whispered. "Lean on me." She did. Step by slow step, he guided her inside. A nurse saw them and quickly brought a wheelchair. As soon as she sat down, her body relaxed, relieved to stop struggling. The nurse asked her a few questions and took her to an examination room. David stepped back, unsure whether he should stay. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, but he also felt uneasy leaving her alone. After a moment of thought, he took a seat in the waiting area. The storm outside grew louder, rain beating against the roof. Minutes turned into an hour, and then 2. Patients came and went. The nurse asked David once if he needed anything, assuming he was waiting for a family member. He simply said he was waiting for someone who needed help. He didn't check his phone or look impatient. He just stayed, hoping Sarah was all right. Inside the exam room, the doctor confirmed that Sarah had 2 cracked ribs. Nothing life-threatening, but very painful and slow to heal. She needed rest, careful breathing, and several follow-up visits. Sarah listened silently, feeling both relieved and nervous. She had never felt so helpless before. When the nurse wheeled her out again, she noticed David still there. His eyes lifted when he saw her, and he stood up quickly. "You're still here?" she said softly, surprised. "Of course," he replied. "I told you I'd wait." Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with her injury. She wasn't used to someone staying for her sake. "They said it's cracked ribs," she explained. "I'll be okay. Just need to rest." "I'm glad it's nothing worse," he said gently. "Do you have anyone to call? Anyone who can help you get home and settle in?" She hesitated. "No, I live alone." David nodded slowly. He didn't want to pressure her, but he also didn't want her struggling again. "If you want," he said, "I can drive you home and help you get inside safely. Only if you're comfortable with that." Sarah studied his face. He looked honest, calm, and respectful. Nothing about him made her feel unsafe. After a long moment, she nodded. David helped her into the truck again, even more carefully than before. The rain poured harder now, turning the world into silver streaks. The roads were slippery, but he drove slowly, making sure every bump was gentle. When they reached her home, he helped her inside, supporting her without pulling or pushing. She sat on the couch with a tired sigh. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." David smiled lightly. "I'm just glad I passed by at the right time." Before leaving, he made sure she had water nearby, blankets within reach, and her phone close. He didn't overstay or talk too much. He simply made sure she was comfortable. "I'll check on you tomorrow," he said softly. "Only if you're okay with that." Sarah looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "Yes, I'd like that." And with that, David stepped outside into the rain, leaving her safe, warm, and no longer alone. The next morning came quietly. Soft sunlight touched the curtains inside Sarah's small living room. She woke slowly, blinking at the ceiling. For a moment, she forgot about her injury and tried to sit up the way she always did. The instant her body moved, a sharp pressure shot through her ribs, reminding her of everything that happened the previous night. She froze, breathing carefully until the pain faded into a dull ache. She lay still for a few seconds, trying to gather strength. Sleeping had been difficult. Every time she turned even a little, her ribs protested. She barely slept more than a few hours. But despite the discomfort, she felt grateful for one thing: she had made it home safely. If David had not stopped, she didn't know how she would have survived the storm or the walk. As she rested, her phone buzzed on the small table beside her couch. She reached for it slowly, making sure not to twist her body. When she looked at the screen, she saw a message. "Good morning, Sarah. Just checking to make sure you're okay. If you need anything, let me know. David. Her eyes softened. She was not used to people checking in on her. She stared at the message for a moment before typing back with careful fingers. Good morning. I'm okay. Thank you for asking. She hesitated, then added, I appreciate your help last night. The reply came quickly. I'm glad you're all right. If you want, I can bring some groceries later. No pressure. Sarah stared at the message again, her heart feeling warm. She lived alone and had always done everything by herself, cooking, cleaning, working long shifts, and handling every problem without asking anyone to help. But now, she couldn't even lift a pot of water without pain. She typed slowly. Groceries would help. Only if you're free. A few seconds later, David replied, I'll come by in an hour. Sarah locked her phone and exhaled slowly. She didn't know why, but she felt less alone than she had in years. She took her time getting up. Every movement had to be careful. She held the back of the couch, pushed with her legs gently, and kept her torso straight. When she finally stood up, she felt a small wave of dizziness, but she steadied herself. She walked slowly to the kitchen, thinking she could make some tea. But even filling the kettle felt difficult. Her arms trembled. She set the kettle down with a quiet sigh. Her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting him so soon. But when she opened the door, there he was holding 2 small bags with groceries. He smiled warmly. Morning, David said. I got a few things you might need. Just basics. Sarah stepped aside to let him in. He walked directly to the kitchen and placed the bags on the counter. She followed him, moving slowly. I didn't want you to struggle today, he said gently. You need rest. Sarah nodded, grateful but unsure how to express it. Thank you. I really appreciate this. David began unpacking the bag's tea, bread, soup, fruit, and a few other simple items she could eat without cooking too much. When he noticed her trying to help, he turned toward her. No, he said softly. Don't strain yourself. Just sit for now. She lowered her eyes a little embarrassed, but she listened. She sat down on a chair and watched him. He moved with calm and quiet confidence, not making any noise or rushing. It reminded her of how gently he had helped her the night before. After he finished, he made her a cup of tea and handed it to her. Careful, he warned. It's hot. She held the warm cup between her hands, letting the heat calm her. You don't have to do all this, she said softly. I know, he replied, but I want to make sure you're all right. His voice held no pressure, no expectation, just care. They talked for a while, nothing heavy. Just simple things. David told her about his work at the repair shop, fixing cars, machines, and sometimes old farm equipment. Sarah told him a little about her job at the warehouse. Though she avoided talking too much about the accident because it made her feel guilty for not asking for help sooner. At one point, she shifted in her chair and winced. David noticed immediately. Your ribs? He asked. She nodded, pressing her hand gently against her side. Hurts more today. That's normal, he said kindly. The second day is usually harder. Your body is still adjusting. His calm tone made her feel strangely safe. There was no judgment in his eyes, only concern. After a while, he stood up. I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll come by later in the afternoon to check on you. Call me if you need anything before that. Sarah looked at him in surprise. You really don't have to come again, he smiled softly. Yeah, I know, but I will anyway. When he left, she watched him walk to his truck through the small window. A strange feeling settled in her chest, not pain, but something warm. The rest of the day passed slowly. Sarah tried her best to stay comfortable, but even sitting took effort. She thought about David several times, wondering why he was being so kind. She barely knew him. Most people she met in her life were polite but distant. She wasn't used to someone staying, someone worrying, someone checking in, maybe she thought. People like him still existed, people who helped without expecting anything in return. By late afternoon, Sarah was lying on the couch with a blanket over her legs. The soft ticking of the wall clock filled the room. She drifted in and out of short naps until she heard a gentle knock on the door. David again. She opened the door slowly. smiling a little despite her tiredness. "You came, promised," he replied. This time he brought a small container of soup he had made at home. "It's light and easy to eat," he explained. "I thought it might help." Sarah took the container with careful hands. "Thank you. Did you rest today?" He asked. "Some," she said, "but it's painful." David nodded. "Ribs take time. The doctor probably told you to avoid bending, lifting, or twisting." "He did," she replied, "but it's hard. I'm used to moving around." "Then let me help," David said, "just until you're stronger." He didn't say it with pity. He said it with steady reassurance, as if helping her was the most normal thing in the world. They talked for a while again. The evening grew quiet around them. At one point, thunder rumbled far away. Sarah tensed without realizing it. Loud sounds made her anxious ever since the accident. David noticed the way her shoulders tightened. He took a small step closer, but not too close. "You're safe," he said softly. "Nothing's going to happen." His words soothed her more than she expected. As the rain began again, tapping softly on the windows, they stayed in the living room, just talking. Sarah told him small pieces of her life, how she came to this town, how she worked different jobs, how she avoided asking anyone for help because she didn't want to be a burden. David listened quietly without interrupting. He never asked for more than she wanted to share. His silence wasn't cold, it was attentive. Every time she paused, he nodded gently, letting her know he understood. At one point, Sarah shifted and gasped softly. David stood up, concerned. "Are you all right?" "It hurts when I move wrong," she whispered. "Stay still," he said softly. He reached down slowly, adjusting the pillow behind her back so she didn't have to twist. His hands moved carefully, making sure she felt no extra pain. Sarah breathed out slowly. "Thank you. You don't need to thank me every time," he said with a warm smile. "I just want you to heal." She looked at him for a moment, feeling the warmth of his kindness sink deeper into her heart. She wasn't used to being cared for this way. She wasn't used to someone noticing her pain before she even mentioned it. After a while, David stood up. "I should go before it gets too late," he said. "But I'll come by tomorrow. You've already done so much," she whispered. "I'll still come," he replied gently. "Get some rest." When he left, the house felt quieter, but not empty. Sarah touched the place on the pillow he had adjusted for her. His care stayed with her like a small light in the dark. That night, though she still struggled with pain, she fell asleep faster. She felt safe knowing someone out there was watching over her, even if from a distance. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. The next week passed slowly but gently. Sarah's ribs were still painful, but the sharpness had turned into a heavy ache she could manage with careful movements. Each day felt a little easier, though she still needed help with basic tasks. And each day, just as he promised, David came by. He never arrived loudly, never made her feel pressured, never acted like she owed him anything. Instead, he would lightly knock, wait for her quiet come in, and step inside with a warm smile. Sometimes he brought soup, sometimes groceries, sometimes nothing at all, only his calm presence. Sarah looked forward to these moments more than she admitted, even to herself, on the 10th day since her injury. The morning sun filled her living room, making the curtains glow softly. She sat on the couch with a pillow behind her back, sipping warm tea. Her breathing still required care, but she no longer gasped with every move. She felt stronger. A gentle knock sounded at her door. Sarah could tell from the rhythm that it. She opened the door slowly. And he smiled when he saw her standing more confidently. "You look better today," he said. "I feel a little stronger," she replied. "Still hurts, though. That's normal. Ribs. Take patience." He stepped inside and handed her a small bag with fruit. She smiled, placing it on the table. They sat in the living room, the morning quiet between them. Sarah spoke first. "You've been coming every day." "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't need to," David replied. "I'm just glad to see you healing." Sarah lowered her eyes. "I'm not used to someone staying. Most people help once and then forget." David shook his head. "I didn't stay because I felt forced. I stayed because I care." The words settled slowly into her heart. Warm like sunlight after rain, they talked for a while about small things: his work, her recovery, the weather, the birds outside her window. Then Sarah shifted slightly, and a soft groan escaped her lips as a sharp wave passed through her ribs. Immediately, David leaned forward. "Don't move too fast," he reminded gently. "Your ribs still need time." Sarah nodded, pressing her hand gently against her side. It was nothing dangerous, just a reminder that healing was still happening. David watched her for a moment. "Do you want to rest?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "I want to talk a little more." "It feels nice," he nodded with a warm smile. Later that afternoon, David helped her prepare a simple meal since she still couldn't bend or lift much. He chopped vegetables while she sat at the counter, guiding him. She laughed softly when he cut the pieces a little too big. "You're trying," she said. "That's all I can promise," he replied. Being around him felt easy, gentle, steady, and comforting. When she grew tired, he helped her sit comfortably again. She watched him from the couch as he washed the dishes she couldn't lift. His quiet, thoughtful movements made her heart feel lighter. At one point, he turned toward her and said, "You know, you don't need to act strong around me. It's okay to rest." She took a slow breath. "It's hard. I've spent years taking care of everything alone. I forgot how it feels to let someone else help." David moved closer, pulling up a chair so he could sit beside her. "You don't have to be alone all the time," he said gently. "People need people." Sarah looked at him quietly. "I was afraid to depend on anyone. And now?" he asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at his face, patient, calm, sincere. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak honestly. Now I realize it's okay if someone cares." David nodded slowly. "Good, because I do." Her chest tightened, not from pain, but from emotion. She had never expected kindness to grow into something deeper. As the days passed, Sarah continued healing. She could stand straighter now, walk without holding her ribs, and even laugh without too much discomfort. The doctor told her she was improving well, but should still avoid heavy lifting. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Sarah stood by the window watching the sunset. The warm colors touched her face, and she felt peaceful. David had stepped outside to bring some tools from his truck. When he returned, he found her leaning slightly against the window frame. "Be careful," he said gently, walking up behind her. "I'm okay," she replied, smiling softly. "I just wanted to see the sunset." He stood beside her, both of them looking outside at the glowing sky. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was comforting. "You know," she said after a moment, "if you hadn't stopped that night, I don't know what would have happened to me." David turned his head toward her. "I saw someone who needed help. That's all. But you didn't just help once," she continued. "You stayed. You waited at the clinic. You came every day?" He looked at her gently. "Because I wanted to. Because I didn't want you to go through it alone." Her heart softened, and she whispered, "Thank you, David, for everything." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, light enough not to hurt her but steady enough to comfort her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth spread through her chest. Later that night, they sat outside on her small porch. The breeze was cool, and the stars slowly appeared in the sky. Sarah wrapped a blanket around herself, sitting carefully so her ribs didn't twist. David sat beside her, close enough that she felt his presence, but not so close that she felt crowded. "This is nice," she said softly. "It is," he agreed. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the quiet night sounds, crickets, distant cars, the soft rustle of leaves. Sarah glanced at him. "Can I tell you something?" She asked. "Anything," he replied. I think I was scared of being weak," she said. "I didn't want anyone to see me struggling." David looked at her with understanding. "Being hurt doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but you made it easier. You made me feel safe," he breathed out slowly. "I'm glad." That's all I wanted. Sarah looked down at her hands. Without you, I might have fallen on that road. I might have gotten worse. He shook his head gently. What matters is that you're okay now. She turned toward him. And what matters to me is that you stayed. Their eyes met, and for a moment everything felt still. The night, the air, the world around them. Sarah didn't move quickly. She didn't need to. She simply leaned her shoulder very lightly against his arm, resting gently so her ribs didn't hurt. It was a simple gesture, but it carried all the trust she had been afraid to show. David didn't move either, except to shift slightly so she could lean comfortably. Neither spoke for a long time. After a while, Sarah whispered, "You protected me when I couldn't protect myself." David's voice was quiet. "I'll always be here for you, if you want me to be." She nodded, feeling warmth in her chest. "I do." From that night on, their connection grew naturally, not rushed. It's not forced, but gently, like a seed that had been waiting for sunlight. Weeks passed. Sarah's ribs healed completely. She returned to work, though her boss told her to avoid heavy lifting for a while. Every evening, she found herself smiling when she thought about seeing David again. One late afternoon, after her final checkup, she walked home with steady steps. She didn't hold her side anymore. Her breathing was easy, and her heart felt stronger than ever. When she reached her porch, she found David waiting there, sitting quietly with his hands folded. Looking toward the sunset, she walked up to him with a warm smile. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" he asked, standing up. "The doctor says I'm fully healed." David's eyes lit up. "That's great news." She nodded. "Yes. But there's something else I want to say." He waited patiently. She took a slow breath. "That night when I said, 'My ribs are already broken,' I felt like everything in my life was breaking too. But then you came, and you held me before I even knew how much I needed help." David looked at her softly, listening. Her voice grew warm. "I healed because of your kindness. Not just my ribs, my heart too." David stepped closer, careful and gentle as always. "Sarah," she smiled up at him. "Stay with me. Not because I'm injured anymore, but because life feels better with you in it." His answer was simple, spoken in a quiet voice full of warmth. "I'm not going anywhere," with the soft glow of evening around them. Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope, safety, and the beginning of something beautiful. Not because he had saved her, but because he had stayed.